Blink and a city skyline is born. Slow down and you can feel time breathe. Ready to turn moments into motion that feels almost alive? Today's deep dive breaks down the 5 best time-lapse cameras from number 5 to number 1, with real-world shoot notes, where each one shines, where they stumble a bit, and which to pick for your style. From hiking hyperlapses to long-form architectural builds, from pocket action cams to full-frame mastery, there's a perfect fit waiting for your next time-bending story. Number 5. GoPro HERO11. So the HERO11 is like that dependable friend who always shows up, rugged, waterproof, and packed with time-lapse tools such as time warp, time-lapse, night-lapse, and even creative presets like star trails and light painting built right in, which is ridiculously fun on a night shoot, you know? In practice, time warp at up to 5.3K looks crisp with Hypersmooth 5.0 smoothing out steps and bumps as you walk the path. And scheduled capture plus intervals make sunrise sequences kind of set and glow, which saves a ton of setup stress when you're racing the dawn. The auto speed in time warp actually does a decent job of adapting to motion, walking through a market versus standing at a lookout, so you get that elastic sense of time without babysitting settings, which feels a bit magical when a scene just flows. For static tripod shots, time-lapse photo mode lets you pick intervals and even raw output, which gives more latitude in post if you're building a photo-based time-lapse instead of a baked video. A nice safety net for tricky exposures. But, well, battery life can still be a thing for longer captures. For multi-hour lapses, go external power or swap packs, because internal alone won't usually last a full evening to night transition, especially in the cold. And while it handles one-cam time-lapses beautifully, once you want truly long intervals, beyond 60s or multi-day sequences, stock firmware limits show, though GoPro Labs firmware can extend intervals and even power down between shots for vastly longer runtimes. Number 4. GoPro HERO12. At first glance, the HERO12 feels like an incremental step, but for time-lapse shooters, it quietly solves some pain points while keeping that action cam agility that makes hyperlapse so addicting. I mean, it just begs to move. Improved efficiency and enduro battery performance in this generation translate into longer, more reliable captures than older models, which really matters when you're stringing frames over hours, and it reduces those heart-sink moments when the camera blinks out before the finale. In use, manual controls in time-lapse modes have gotten more attention, letting you lock exposure behaviors more predictably. Super handy for sun to city light transitions to avoid that jarring flicker as the camera hunts. Time-lapse and time warp quality remains top-notch up to 5.3K, and with horizon leveling options, the footage feels polished right out of camera, which is a huge win for quick turnaround social posts and reels. However, look, being honest, the HERO12 still inherits the physics of small sensors. In low light, noise creeps in and you'll want to keep ISO conservative and shutter slow if you can mount it, but that makes time warp less ideal after blue hour. Also, while the extended runtimes are better than older models, true long-term still really requires external power or AC with the battery removed if you're pushing multi-day intervals, so it's not replacing a dedicated long-term rig on a construction site by itself. 3. Canon EOS M50. Moving into mirrorless territory, the Canon M50 brings larger sensor depth, pleasing color, and that classic Canon look to time-lapse work, which, well, can make a simple cloud drift feel cinematic without trying too hard. The built-in time-lapse movie modes are straightforward, with scene-based presets and custom intervals, letting you pick interval and total frames and have the camera compile a finished movie in camera. Super convenient when you don't want to stitch frames later. The catch is that the built-in time-lapse video mode restricts certain shutter behaviors, no true long exposures beyond typical video constraints. So for light trails or super smooth night motion, you'll likely want interval shooting of stills and to compile in post. The M50 doesn't offer a native intervalometer for photo sequences on all firmware variants, which is, a bit frustrating, but there are workarounds. Bluetooth intervalometer apps can trigger exposures at set intervals, unlocking proper photo-based time-lapse with longer shutter control. For long-term work, the bigger sensor handles dusk transitions more gracefully than action cams when you're shooting raw stills. You can balance shutter, ISO, and aperture for consistent exposure ramping, then deflicker in post for that buttery day to night. If you upgrade to the M50 Mark II, Canon expanded the time-lapse function's intervals significantly, making the body much more viable for slow-changing scenes, though serious long-term shooters will still prefer external power and robust storage management. Summing up, the M50 is a lovely gateway to real camera time-lapse with a learning nudge. Number 2. DJI Osmo Action 5 Pro. Alright, this one surprised a lot of folks. The Osmo Action 5 Pro is a time-lapse sleeper hit, with 4K time-lapse capture across a wide range of intervals and a pipeline that makes finishing quick and clean without sacrificing control. Fast in the field, strong in the edit. Intervals span from half a second to 60 minutes, which covers everything from traffic pulses to slow-building golden hour shadows. And the camera's processing produces ready-to-share clips while also supporting raw photos for deeper grading workflows when you want maximum latitude. The exposure tools, WB control, and practical shutter choices give you room to finesse motion blur, set your interval, keep shutter around half the interval for that pleasing blur, and you're off to the races with minimal fiddling, which makes it feel almost pro with training wheels. Hyperlapse is solid too, and if you're moving through a scene, stabilization keeps it watchable while retaining that elastic sense of time. It's the kind of camera that invites experimentation without punishing mistakes. For travel time-lapse workflows, the built-in storage plus microSD expansion is surprisingly convenient. Having 64 GB onboard as a buffer is handy if you forget a card, and the overall bitrate gives clean detail without bloating files. And because the UI exposes time-lapse duration and interval in a clear way, it's easy to visualize final clip length on the spot, a small detail that prevents those "oh no, only 4 seconds of footage" moments. Number 1. Sony a7 III. Here's the crown. The Sony a7 III took a leap with firmware 3.0 by adding a built-in intervalometer, transforming it into a time-lapse beast that holds up even years later, because full-frame dynamic range plus interval control is just, well, chef's kiss for day to night. Interval shooting lets you set start delay, interval from 1 to 60 seconds, total shots, silent shutter, and exposure tracking, which together mean you can plan a dusk sequence, keep it quiet, and minimize flicker by controlling how shutter shifts as light falls. The full-frame sensor's low-light performance and color depth make deflickered photo sequences smooth and rich, and with the classic guidance, keep shutter roughly half your interval, you can dial motion blur that feels cinematic rather than staccato. Silent shooting reduces mechanical wear for long runs, and when paired with external power, the a7 III becomes a reliable anchor for architecture, astrophotography, and multi-hour urban stories, delivering files that grade beautifully. Firmware menus place the interval function logically in the shooting drive settings, and once it's part of muscle memory, setups are fast. Pick interval, shots, set exposure mode, lock WB, and go. No accessories required unless you're going very long, which is liberating in the field. The beauty here is flexibility. Compile JPEGs quickly for speed or use raw sequences for premium grades. Either way, you're starting with robust imagery that action cams can't mimic in low light or high contrast scenes, especially across transitions. Final thoughts. That's all for today, folks.